friends. Welcome to HETMA Presents Chair to Chair, the podcast where I sit down with the incredible leaders driving innovation and community within HETMA, the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance. I'm Erin Maher-Moran, chair of HETMA's board of directors, and I'm excited to bring you into conversations that go beyond the day-to-day of technology management. Each episode will explore not just what our committee chairs do for HETMA, but who they are as people, professionals, and leaders. We'll dive into their career journeys, the moments that shape their perspectives, and vision that drives their work in higher education technology. Most importantly, we'll connect their stories to the themes and challenges that matter most to our community right now. So whether you're a HETMA member, considering getting more involved, or simply curious about the people who dedicate their time to advancing our profession, these conversations are for you. So settle in and let's go chair to chair. And in the chair today, I have Andy Vogel from the Ohio State University, who's HETMA's communications chair. Thank you for chatting with me today, Andy.
Yes, thanks, Erin, from the Johns Hopkins University. It's always good to see you.
Yes. So, this month's theme is oil change, time to level up, upskill, share with peers, and learn new insights, and tackle a challenge outside your comfort zone. But yeah, that aside, let's get to know you a little bit more. So for those who may not be familiar, what is your role at OSU?
Yeah, so I'm an instructional designer with the College of Engineering. So I have a background in AV, and I started in AV, and I can go into all of that stuff, but that's where I'm currently at.
Well, absolutely. So then, so tell us a little bit how you found your way into education technology and then transitioned into instructional.
Sure, yes. So, gosh, it was probably almost 10, 12 years ago today, around this time. But I started at Ohio State, and my background is in education. I got my undergrad at Ohio University in integrated language arts. And I realized I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I was like, I need to go back to school, but I also don't want to take loans out. So I started working at Ohio State full-time in dining services, actually. So I actually started out as a dishwasher. Then I moved into back of the house, that sort of thing. Did that for a little bit. And then I landed a job in the College of Education where I was an event coordinator. So we had video studios. We helped students edit their videos. All education students have to do a student teaching video to graduate. So my job was to compress their video down to 90 megabytes because that was the thing we had to work with. So even back then, that was stressful for folks with all different sorts of technology. iPhone was still kind of the new thing on the block. So we were figuring that out. And then the CIO one day just came up to me. He's like, hey, how would you like to manage all the classrooms in the College of Education? And I was like, I have no idea how to do that stuff. He's like, great, you start next week. And so that's how I got into the AV stuff. I got kind of thrown headfirst and figured out Crestron, Extron, every flavor you could think of, at every different life cycle you could think of too. So we had about 50 classrooms and 30 conference rooms, and it was just me. And so I was running that stuff. Then I switched to Central AV support on campus, where they have their in-house integrated team, a much larger team. So that was a good change of pace for me. And I did that during an interesting time of March 2020 is when I transferred that job. So I actually started in the new job remote, being phone support for what our learning management system is, Carmen Canvas. So then I got that experience for a few months. Then we went back in and social distanced 300 or whatever classrooms it was. I make a joke, but it's kind of true. I think I've been to almost every single building on campus. And so so fast forward, there was an opportunity in College of Engineering. They needed an AV person. I went over there, did that for a little bit, and then they're like, hey, guess what? An instructional design position just opened up. We think it'd be really helpful if you moved into there. So I literally moved down the hall into that, and that's where I've been ever since.
That is such a neat way to kind of have come into the AV space, but then also kind of to transition into that middle role between the faculty and the technology. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's been a journey. It continues to be a journey, but it's a good journey.
Right. And so how did you get connected with HETMA then?
Yeah, so I think it was 2020. I think in 2019 I went to my first InfoComm. And then, I met the folks at Avixia and stuff, and I wanted to get more interested, and so or involved. And so I, applied to do my first presentation, which was like lessons learned from digital signage. And then, of course, 2020 happened, I went remote. And so it's like, hey, unfortunately, you're not going to present, or there's no InfoComm. And Joe Way, who I didn't really know, reached out and said, hey, I heard you're supposed to present. We're doing this other virtual conference thing, and we think it would be a really good fit. Would you be interested? And I was like, oh, absolutely, because that was like the height of things too. I was craving like human interaction and talking to other people and that sort of thing. So that worked out really well. That's where I met like, Mike Peterson, Troy Chewy at the time when he was in higher ed. He sat in on my sessions. That was really helpful. So it was just great doing that and meeting people from literally all over the world. And then I've just, kept in touch, met you, other folks throughout the years. And yeah, it's just been great.
Yeah, so you were part of the virtual before it was cool.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Amazing. And so then, now you're one of our chairs. Like how, what made you want to take on the communications chair role?
Yeah. So my undergrad, I have an English minor, and it's just nice to use it every once in a while. And it's like a lot of like what my day job is, making technical communication not so technical. And so it was just another outlet for me. And then another shameless plug I'll make is, I'm working on my doctorate right now on higher education student affairs. It's really nice to write an academia text. It's really nice not to always write an academia text. So this is a great outlet, of writing with blogs or more casual and just being able to, talk about the technology and, oh, did I cite this in APA 7? Did I make sure I got a peer review? Is this an appropriate source? That's very important for governance of things. I'm not trying to lay down that, but it's nice to have like casual conversations like this, like stuff like that. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I feel that after having gone through my master's and
yes.
The citations and the whatnots.
Yes.
And now my husband has been putting together workbooks for his in his field. And I'm like, make sure you have your citations, cite your sources and do that. And he was just like, nobody cares. I'm like, but they do.
They do.
Like, the academics do at least.
They do. They'll call you.
Right? And so how does your work with Ohio State inform how you approach like the HETMA communication strategy?
Yeah. So it's and that's something I always have to be really conscious and aware of. I'm very fortunate with Ohio State. And like, it's a big university, but it's very different from other universities, and we're a decentralized university. So I've been on academic units, central units, back to, academic units, very different sorts of things from SLAs to just funding. And so I always try to keep that perspective when I'm talking to folks from different areas, whether it's public, private, liberals, arts, or, small, big, whatever it is. So that's how I try to just, approach things and, be like, understand like, okay, when we operate like an academic, we're almost more, or academic unit, we're almost more operating like a smaller school. And then with the central, it seems like, maybe a larger school, or in terms like a private school that has all the standards and things under, lock and key. The decentralized units don't usually get the flexibility for that. So.
And so, like, what unique communications challenges exist in the higher education technology realm that may not exist in other sectors?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think a lot of times I'll see things or review products of folks, and, there's always something like new, and, manufacturers are really proud of it. And it's very, technical, proficient. A lot of times that falls on deaf ears because it's just the usability is what's really key. So I usually ask folks, do you have white papers or case studies? Because that's what sells the product. It's like, you can tell me this is the best beamforming, acoustic, echo cancellation, insert buzzword, AI audio thing now. That doesn't matter to a lot of my folks. They want to know, did John Hopkins use it? Did Northwestern use it? What was it like? What was their experience? Did a Big Ten school use it? Like, that sort of thing. And that's how to continue those relationships and those conversations. Yeah. And just like, what fits for engineering may not fit for arts and sciences, and vice versa. So knowing that and talking through folks like, hey, I understand, like they really like your product over here, but our folks just have different challenges or needs. And, just being transparent and honest with that with folks. It's taken me a long time. It's very easier said than done. It's a different type of vendor relationship and a different type of, communicating relationship.
Yeah. And it is amazing how strong the peer institution influence can be.
Yes.
Because the minute you're like, oh, this school has it, it's like, well, we need to have it too.
Right. It's a competition thing. Right. It's like, we got to recruit. I mean, years ago, we were all about iPads, right? That was a big thing here. You couldn't turn the TV on without seeing the marching band with an iPad and stuff like that. And then I just kind of went away. But
right.
That's
on
all
to
right.
the next thing
On
that's
to the next
bigger,
thing.
better,
Right.
flashier, prettier.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you communicate the value of technology investments to non-technical stakeholders on campus?
Yeah. I always try to look at like how this benefits your teaching. And a lot of the challenges we see is, faculty and students are put in classrooms that aren't quite adequate for what that class is. And it's a numbers game, right? The registrar has a bunch of seats that they need to fill. And so it's really hard to get that, that qualitative like look at things like, okay, this room here has the active learning space. And I know I read your syllabus and know that this is going to go on. That doesn't, we don't know what we don't know, right? And so that's the biggest hurdle, I think, is putting people into the spaces where they feel like they belong and have the option to use the technology, not feel forced to use it. So I think that's the biggest lesson learned is like, we can make a lot of assumptions like, okay, this is a great tool. We should, like, I talked about interactive whiteboards at the HETMA conference. This is a good tool and things for folks. But if that doesn't speak to their teaching style or methods, they're not going to use it no matter how awesome it is. So it's having, again, those communication channels, relationship. And, I always tell folks, start small, start with a newsletter, start with an open house, and then you have to continually do it because faculty, we got a lot of folks who are tenure, but we also have a lot of new faces every year.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. It's like, it's a constant job security thing also to, train and, advocate. And also I try to tell folks like, this is the tech we're using now. That doesn't mean we're going to be always using it tomorrow. So we can be flexibility. So yeah, I just, not to do a bunch of academic buzzwords, but I follow universal design for learning. We use a lot of different, like flex space is helpful resource too, looking at different classroom types and getting, studies from there and kind of being able to, when you go to a meeting or training session, you have that in your back pocket. So when someone says, well, why would I use breakout groups in this room? Why would I do wireless casting this way? Or, walk me through that.
So any tips on how to get faculty to go to training?
Right. So food, if you can get it, but, obviously there's tight budgets and everything. What I do is I always try to partner with the teaching and learning center. So a lot of schools and colleges will have those, and they'll have an assistant dean. They're always looking for folks, at least in my experience. So I did a coffee chat this week on just Notebook LM. I just screen shared, and there was things that I did show, and there was other items like, I'm not going to highlight this because that's just not my expertise. Being honest with that. or I just didn't think those features were helpful. And so, we're just going to kind of look at it. But I also try to pause because they're the experts at what they do. And so I want to pause and hear from them. So it's again, building those relationships, like looking at your teaching and, learning departments. Those are usually your faculty champions that are always ahead, right? They're like, okay, the new tool that might be not supported is the one they're using in their classroom. So you gotta want to talk to them anyway, and to educate them on that part. But they're also a really good ally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got to have those allies to make sure that everybody's aligned in things. Cause as AV professionals, we think that some things are super cool. We want to put them in rooms, but it is not necessarily if you build it, they will come.
Right.
It's really if it's useful, they might use it, but
right. Yeah.
It's better to put in what they're needing as opposed to this is cool.
Right. One of the first rooms I did, I was like, oh, lecture capture, great. And so I put the camera in the back of the room and everything. This is before COVID. And I did that, and I was like so proud of this room and stuff. And I gave my first tour to a person, and they're like, why is the camera in the back of the room? I want the remote end to see the speed. They wanted a conference room style room. They just didn't know the words to say that, and I didn't know the words to ask that. So that was my, my lesson learned there. It's like, all right, they don't know what they don't know. So you're going to have to sometimes drag it out of them to, to figure out what's the thing that they need.
Right. That's a great communication lesson.
Yes.
Figuring out
yes.
What I say one thing, they're saying a different thing,
right.
But it could mean the same thing.
Right.
Learning to speak the other languages.
Mm-hmm.
Key. Absolutely. So let's shift and talk a little bit more about the comms chair role. And as with all of the committee chairs in HETMA, the roles are constantly evolving.
Yeah.
Can you tell those who are listening what the comms chair, what the role currently encompasses?
Yeah. So right now it is going through making sure we have newsletters out to our members, keeping them updated, using some of our partners like Edwire and sending information out to them and making sure they're updated to disseminate information. But it's also like, talking to vendors, sponsors, things like that, and, understanding, how we can evolve the partnership and communicate, their events and things that we partner on, just maintaining that. And other opportunities, obviously our social media, a lot of our folks who are helping out, like Chris Kelly's been really great with the X posts and LinkedIn posts. And I think, Instagram, it's the one I saw the other, I was like, oh, I didn't post that, but someone else did, and they did a really good job. So it's a lot of that. And then, for me, it's like, the highlight is the writing piece, is being able to write, meet with Ryan to see kind of what's the pulse check of what do our readers want to see out there, and just continually cycling through that.
Yeah. And how do you approach communicating to such a diverse membership across different institution types, career levels, and now globally?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying not to be the biggest OSU fanboy right now, but but working at a very large institution, you have very many different people. When I worked in one position, I wore like 10 different hats. And then when I worked in Central, I wore one hat. And it was like, do this thing very well all the time. So that has given me the perspective of people have very different jobs. They might have the same title, but that does not mean the same thing. So it's having a broad but purposeful message. That's what I always try to go for. It's, I try not to make, these general claims that are pretty, narrow for certain attributes and things like that. And so I think that's my strength. There's a lot of skills I don't have in AV, and I think that helps me sometimes when speaking on these things. I'm not a programmer, and more power to those who are. But I think it's sometimes it's helpful for me when I kind of act like an end user and say the thing that's very general, because I think that resonates with multiple audiences.
And how do you balance promoting HETMA's programs and initiatives while keeping communications feeling genuine and community
Yeah.
focused?
Yeah, talking to you all is the biggest thing. Staying involved with, our app, the HETMA app on the Mighty Communications platform, that helps in seeing. Just going to, to calls and meetings, and I have a busy, hectic schedule too, so I know like it's a challenge to do that for a lot of folks, but that's the biggest thing. And then if you can, going out to events, whether it be road shows, obviously EDUCAUSE and InfoComm are some of the bigger ones we go to. That really helps because you get the human element, and then you can really hear, how folks operate on their campus, or how, maybe some challenges with manufacturers, or things that are like, hey, we didn't think of it this way when we developed a solution. Can we get some of your input? Those have been really meaningful conversations. So I think it's like, if you can get people on your campus, meet, even if it's you're just meeting with other departments on your campus, like I said, start small. Like we could have a good relationship with Columbus State Community College, very different subpopulation, but it's really helpful to talk to them. They use different integrators and AV systems than we do, and that sort of stuff for their own reasons, then that's helpful to hear because it gets us outside of our chamber, and like it challenges our perspective.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about those in-person experiences, whether it's just a simple conversation or having coffee or going to a trade show, which I love. I love getting to see everybody in person. It's like,
yeah, absolutely,
so energizing for me. But I want to make sure that we get to talk a little bit about this month's theme. So oil change, time to level up. So when you think about your professional journey, what's been your most significant level up moment?
Yeah. So, I mean, I got my master's. That was a big one. Okay. But I think what was really helpful was after getting it was getting more, confident of going to events and talking to people, and then like presenting. That helped me level up, especially doing like, the virtual conferences. That was like an easy way for me. And I won't say easy, but it was more attainable way of me being able to present because I didn't have to travel. I didn't have to ask for a professional development budget. And that got me more comfortable with speaking to others and, and having those conversations. And then taking it to the next level, doing more in-person presentations, like, the HETMA, pre-show workshops at InfoComm. Those sorts of things were really helpful in leveling up. Poster sessions at EDUCAUSE is another example. To me, that's like less intimidating than like doing, the show floor and having a huge forum. So those are the ways I have found to level up. And I've not seen every presentation I did was good. There's a few that I felt like I bombed on. But that has helped me build, more experience and like being able to share, the things that I do, but also then afterwards I get to hear from other folks. And that's what's always been super valuable of schools that I might not be familiar with or organizations or other things.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. The like virtual sessions are such a great way to kind of dip your toe into the like public speaking realm, because it's less intimidating when there may be a bunch of boxes on that screen, but it's way less intimidating than when there's actual people sitting there out in front of you and you're like, okay. But yeah, I definitely recommend to anyone who has any interest in, getting into speaking to reach out to me and let me know, because people are always looking for people to put on panels and our own lunch and learns and stuff like that. So we're always looking for new voices.
Yeah, new voices. I really want to highlight that too, because it's like, I'm very fortunate to get asked to do these things, but I don't want to just be the only guy, right? And I know there's so many other folks that haven't done it yet, and they may feel that, well, I don't have the experience or I don't have the thing. I'm like, I technically don't even work in AV. So like you could totally do like, so highly encourage those listening, new voices, please. We want to hear you.
So we kind of started talking a little bit about getting out of that comfort zone. Can you share a time when you tackled a challenge that was completely out of your comfort zone?
Yeah.
What pushed you to do it?
Yeah. Oh, so it's when I started early. So like when I was managing the event center, one of the events we had to manage was we have this. I don't even know if it's called this anymore, but it was like EdTPA or TK12. Basically, the education licensure program where all undergrads have to upload a video of their student teaching. It's a graduation requirement. They usually get like a month to do it. And, it's students of all backgrounds, right? Some are really tech proficient, some are not. Some have the digital divide where they had to go loan a camera from the library and it has an SD card that might kind of work, results may vary. So I had a room of 100 of them, I think, in the event space, and everyone's, working away and doing stuff. I had one person come up to me and, her laptop, it was every bad thing you could think of. It was like out of date. I think she was even torrenting something, it was just like the processes were out the roof and she was trying to render this video and she was getting real stressed out. And then like computer crashed and it was just like, where's my video? I was like, I think it's gone. And so like she started crying. And then of course, everyone, you could hear a pin drop. All 100 heads just turned to me. Like, he's the tech guy. He's supposed to fix it. And he just lost her video. Are we going to lose her video? I could hear the room. Like, and so she's out doing a thing, like trying to recuperate. So I just immediately take her computer and, his personal device. I'm not really supposed to do that, but I just did it anyway. And like get on and like find the video, recover, do things. I'm like, all right, it's here you go. Like, we got it back and then we edited it. And then like the room's temperature went back to normal. But that was probably my first, like, you're in the fire here and you got to swim through it and, find a solution. If it's not you, do some Google foo or something to figure it out, have some backups. So since then I've made, redundancy plans. I've, it's prepped me to, introduce myself a little bit better and talk through things and be like, if this happens, this is what we're going to do. So again, it's back to that communication, right? It's like, I just assumed, they're undergrads, they can figure out video. That was not the case.
And so how has your approach to professional growth and upskilling evolved throughout your career?
Yeah. So I try to just, I'm just a naturally curious person. And like our field lends itself to that because it's always changing. And I think that's like also like working in higher ed, we're obviously learning focus. So that's what's always driven my thing is because our faculty and students are always researching the next thing in their respective fields. So I want to be able to complement them and support them. And so I think looking at just what's out there, what's initiatives, to me, it keeps the job interesting and fun. But it also, it allows me to be that expert for folks that don't have time to like research the next classroom technology thing. And so I'm happy to do that. And I think, whether that's taking a certification, going on LinkedIn Learning, looking at things, going to the Vixia's website and taking some of their certifications, whatever the thing is, I always challenge folks. Like we did ITIL last year, then I did Quality Matters the year before, and I was very fortunate that the university had funding for those things. So like, especially if it's funded, I try to take advantage of it and see. I'm in a professional learning community with the College of Engineering. I'm not an engineer. My background's all education, but they're open to having staff because they want their staff to be educated because it's a plus for them. So I always try to find those little avenues and communicate, I'm interested, because then that helps not only me professionally, but it does help my unit in the college, because then they can be like, okay, Andy's actually working with the faculty. It's not just like, hey, we're working for, and it's a reactive relationship, which that stuff's fine too. But this is like where we can get those deeper collaborations.
That's awesome. And so is there a skill that you've developed recently that's kind of surprising or a little different?
I've surprised myself at like, it's being able to like be flexible and like not, and take criticism, because like I think a lot of times, in our job, it's very customer service oriented, but it's like, it's because someone else is trying to do their job. And, my role is to like to empower folks and, go through things. So I think it's like, I've been told, a very calming presence. And so that's something that has always surprised me, because initially I was very stressed out when I started learning this stuff, like, and like, what do you mean I need to have toolbox and do a subnet? Like, what are you talking? Like, all this stuff is so foreign to me. And so, it's just learning through it and being transparent and honest. Like, I think people actually really appreciate that when you're talking, like, listen, I don't know what the problem is either. So this is what I can do. I'm going to have to take the room offline or do something in between classes. And I got to, figure this out or call it integrator or do something. This is, it's not just you. It's not just a you thing. So yeah, just having that honesty and vulnerability, that has surprised me. And that's a skill that it's taken me a while to be comfortable with.
Oh, absolutely. Because I think our instant reaction most of the time is to try to put our best foot forward.
Yes.
And try and always have the facade of everything's great. It's fine. I'm perfect.
Right.
But yeah, there is something to be said about that honesty and to put that out there. And so like great communication, it tells great stories. And how do we tell HETMA's stories authentically?
Yeah, I think, it's looking at, our members and their experiences, and not so much the tool or, the title or thing. It's more like, how do they interact with their community and campus? Because, an AV manager at, a smaller school, they might be running the whole show versus someone else, elsewhere. They might just be programming and they're really good at programming. That's what they do in and out every single day. So it's making sure to tell those stories, authentically. And, it takes a lot of listening. It takes, looking through the nuance. I think that's the biggest thing that, I've learned just in the past years of talking to people, is like, it sometimes takes multiple conversations to understand things, because things are very much more nuanced than, they really appear to be. And that's been the biggest thing that's so helpful, because it's like, maybe it varies because of the state they're in. Maybe it varies because of the school status they're in, and there's just things that we don't have a common language because it's just different. And so it's talking through that nuance and understanding, like, oh, this is what they mean when they say that, because it means something completely different over here at Ohio State. Like, I have to sometimes realize, oh yeah, you're not all like us, we do. And not to say we do things the right way all the time either. So it's having that, perspective. I think that's something academia is really good about, is being critical of oneself and everything else, but constructively.
Yeah. So speaking of stories, like what's a HETMA story or moment that you're particularly proud of?
Oh man. So honestly, let me think. I think it was like, only met people right away, and I'm like, oh, he's a lot taller than I thought. And like, and I went up to him and he had no idea who I was. And I said it, and he's like, oh my God, and so it's that excitement. And then like walking into a room of strangers, but they're really not. And it's like, you're like, oh, it's, and you're hugging people and stuff like that. And it's just such a good positive energy. So I think that was like the most surprising thing. And like, well, every time I tell my dad, like, I'm going out to, one of these trade shows or things, he's like, oh, that's like the movable feast. You're meeting all your family from different parts of the world. And it's just like, yeah, it's actually a pretty accurate way of saying it. Like, so it's really, that's always just really exciting. It's like, hey, I may only see folks in person a few times a year, but it's always a good time. It's like a little reunion.
Yeah. And we got to celebrate your birthday.
I know. That's right. Yeah. That's every year. It's all kind of a dangerous thing, but it's I'll accept it. Like,
absolutely, so much fun. Oh my goodness, yeah. It was like that year in particular seemed very much like, oh my gosh, you all have 3 dimensions.
Yeah,
and like You are
Yeah.
actual human beings as
Yes.
opposed to little
Yes.
boxes on my screen.
Yes.
That was a good one. That was absolutely a good one. So let's look ahead a little bit. What is your vision for HETMA's communication strategy as we continue to grow globally
Yeah.
and evolve and change?
Yeah, I know. I want to see like, oh man, I don't want to overdo it, but I would love to see our hooks in a lot of different things. You know, there's a lot of communities out there, like commercial AV has their thing, and residential AV has their thing. I would like us, to somehow, operate with them in an intentional way, and just kind of like, just share things out through those channels. I really, continue building up, our community base, the road to 10K. Awesome. So like, what's the next goal for us? Continue that. Um, and I think it's just like, it's always surprising because it's like, I feel like every year I always learn there's some new group or thing that, I didn't know existed. And there's these folks, I didn't know existed because not everyone gets to go to InfoComm or EduCause or some of those big things. So it's like trying to meet folks in those areas and see, how HETMA can support them, what they can contribute. So those are, those are the interesting little challenges and, things I like to do.
And so before we wrap up, what's one thing you want people to know about the power of effective communications in building professional community?
Yeah. I think the thing I want people to know is you're allowed to make mistakes and you're allowed, to fail. And it's about how you recover from the fail. And I think most AV techs know that's a big skill they have anyway. But that it's really almost a universal skill. It's like, when I'm teaching, I teach 3 classes. The first class usually goes pretty good. In the middle class, I'll try something. And then the third class, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do that again, So it's like, and that's every week. It's not just like, oh, I tried that once this semester. So I think it's like taking a little bit of risk and trying things, I'm not saying, berate or cuss someone out. Don't take that far of a risk. But like, try something a little different, put yourself out there. Sometimes we can be a little introverted, and that's okay too. Do what works for you. Maybe it's more of a Teams chat or something, whatever, a newsletter, things like that. Maybe it's a little more passive. That's all right. But I think just having that open communication shows value of, your unit, and it helps you stand out. And I think it does help your coworkers and team when, doing things like going to HETMA or talking to others, going to other campus events, like I was at College of Medicine the other week. I don't have a medicine background. It's just like, but like, just seeing what they're doing and talking to them and learning that sort of stuff, that helps me become a better communicator because then I'll learn some terminology from them that I didn't know before. And then I'm like, okay, well, I can, at least speak to it as a novice and not just be completely out of the loop.
Yeah, absolutely. And that takes you that much closer to being able to speak their language if you need to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Time.
Yeah. Like hit up Andy in College of Engineering. He came to one of our things. We know him. We can talk to him. And that becomes super valuable, especially when you're in a bind. Like, hey, you got any DMPSs laying around? Or you got something to throw in this rack? Like, sure. Like,
so how can our listeners connect with you after this episode airs?
Yeah. So you can always email me. It's Vogel, VOGEL .234 @osu.edu, or I'm on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, all those social media things. Or really, you could just connect with me through the HETMA community app. That's probably the best way to connect with me, actually. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Right? Yes. Make use of that app.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you so much, Andy, for pulling back the curtain on the strategic communications that work, that keeps HETMA, connected and informed and engaged. And I really appreciate your time because I know that you are super busy.
Yeah, this is a great break for me.
Well, and to everyone listening, I hope this conversation has inspired you to think about your own communications, whether that's how you present ideas to leadership, connect with your campus community, or engage with colleagues in HETMA. If you've been hesitating to share your story, contribute to a discussion on our online community, or put yourself out there in any way, let this be your nudge. Your perspective, your challenges, your innovations, they matter, and our community wants to hear from you. If you missed the virtual conference, recordings of the sessions are available to our members under the resources area on the HETMA online community. And don't let that opportunity to level up pass you by. Those peer connections and learning moments are exactly the kind of oil change your professional growth needs. Next month, I'll be exploring Checkpoint. Audit your impact with another incredible HETMA leader as we continue our journey of growth and community building together. Until then, keep refining your message, keep sharing your story, and remember, effective communication isn't about perfection, it's about authenticity and connection. I'm Erin Maher-Moran, and this has been Chair to Chair. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for tuning in to HETMA Presents. This show is a production of Higher Ed AV Media. Please visit higherEdAV.com to learn more about this show and a host of others. The views expressed here are not necessarily those of our respective institutions, employers, or sponsors. We'll be back soon with another installment of HETMA Presents.